Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I want to get to PMQs, Prime Minister questions, so I'm going to make this one blisteringly fast. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can always support the Patreon Super Chat. I've made the point to you before that the immigration policy in the last administration also wasn't that great. What Trump is doing is ghastly. There is no but associated with that. That is a period. That is an exclamation point behind that sentence. What Trump is doing is ghastly. That said, he is an extension of the previous president. To make that point clear, I want to show you this. This is an immigration lawyer that had the opportunity to meet with Obama. How did we get here? That's what he's calling this thread. In 2015, I shook Obama's hand, thanked him for DACA, and asked him to reverse course and close for-profit baby jails, also known as family detention centers. He opened in Daley and Carnes City, Texas. What he said shook me to my core. Specifically, I told him it's wrong and it's going to be a stain on your legacy. He stopped moving onto the next person in the rope line and looked back at me. I'd gotten his attention. He turned back, looked at me. Are you an immigrant lawyer? Yes. Now, I'm moving down because he goes a little bit to the bottom. So when I said yes, the president looked back and engaged. I'll tell you what we can't have. It's these parents sending their kids here on a dangerous journey and putting their lives at risk. And he walked down the rope line. Not, I'm working on it. Not, thanks for your support. Just, yes, this is the right move given what I perceived to be the facts. I was dumbfounded. Now, why is he saying he was dumbfounded by this? Because ultimately, he's making the point that the Obama administration had made a determination at some point to use disincentives to wanting to create an environment that was so bad that those parents wouldn't want to send their kids here. He's making the argument that the way we got here is the basis of essentially Trump's logic. This as an extension, what Trump is doing is an extension of the prior president. That logic being, we need to create a hellish environment where they won't send their people here. And in Trump's case, he has the extra bonus of trying to use it for political points. He's had to reverse course. Chuck Schumer is not necessarily going to go along with the course in the way that he's reversed it. So I have no idea what this is going to take right now, because it seems like those people are going to be at the border for a while, and those baby jails are going to be there for a while. And let's be honest, Democrats like that those baby jails are there because they can exploit it for political points. I'm being callous here, and I'm looking at this purely from the standpoint of politics, because however you want to think about the chaos that's taking place from the standpoint in the lives of the families, do not be disillusioned into believing that the people who are political players are not thinking about the politics. They are. These baby jails started in the last administration. Ripping the family apart was also part of the last administration. It wasn't used to the extent that Donald Trump is using it. Donald Trump has jumped the shark and has taken it to gross and magnificent proportions. And if we're being honest, the immigration system in and of itself was somewhat problematic in the way that we used to go about ripping these families apart. But I kind of want to make a point here. You have a lot of Johnny-come-latelys that are all of a sudden upset about this and angry about this. When Obama was deporting 3 million people, when people were coming to this country seeking asylum because they were living in hellish scenarios with violence, gangs, where their lives were on the line, and they were coming to this shiny city on the hill hoping for some level of empathy. And instead they got Fortress America, where guards took them away and put them in a for-profit prison in Texas. You have a lot of Johnny-come-latelys that all of a sudden they're angry about this. Their hair is on fire about this. About this now. When the 3 million were going, not so much about it now. You know who wasn't a Johnny-come-lately to this? Bernie Sanders. I'm showing this and I'm giving him credit for this because I give Bernie Sanders a lot of shit sometimes, being a sheepdog and that type of stuff. And the last video that I did was on Rachel Maddow, asking this question of why does the media focus on one thing versus another? With multiple traumas, why do they focus on one thing and not the other? Why is it that this very specific trauma that's taking place? And I understand this is overtly gross, but what is the quirk where media uses where they say this story and not that story? It's not an objective lens. So these people, for the most part, can take political points when the lens hits this way. It catches on fire. People pile on and say, yes, let's put a knife in them while the media is watching. What were people doing when the media wasn't watching? That's interesting, right? Because that's when you know they mean it. It's not political points. It's not just gamesmanship. It's one of those cases where I'm doing this. I'm not getting a huge amount of fanfare, but I'm doing this because it's right. Because it's the right thing to do. It's what I believe in. I don't have to be pushed into the position. When I get up in the morning, that's where I am. When I go to bed at night, that's where I am. Bernie Sanders sent this press release April 4th, 2016, before the election, in the Obama administration, calling for an end to the separation of families. What is taking place here now in the Trump administration? At a lower level, what was taking place in the Obama administration? And I'm saying lower level from the standpoint of ripping the families apart, but he was still putting people in these for-profit baby jails. Sanders was against it back in 2016. When people ask, what was Sanders doing when these baby jails were taking place in the Obama administration? Sanders was against it. Unless there were time-traveling hackers that put this on site, Bernie Sanders was against this during the Obama administration, before the limelight was on it, when nobody cared that 3 million people were shipped out of the country and people were being turned away, whose only other option was to walk into another situation where they could have ended their lives. United States Senator Bernie Sanders on Monday issued the following statement as minors, parents, and asylum seekers fleeing violence continue to be targeted by immigration and customs enforcement. America has always been a beacon of liberty for those fleeing violence and persecution. Raids separating families are not who we are. Deportation can be a death sentence to detain minors, parents, and asylum seekers. Asking children as young as 3 to represent themselves at hearings is a shameful miscarriage of justice and cannot be allowed to stand. Families deserve fair treatment and our compassion, not a process rigged to expose them to danger. The cruel and inhumane imprisonment, the deportations of Central American refugees who have been fleeing violence must end. The president should enact a moratorium on these raids as soon as possible. The arbitrary separation of families and the possibility of possible deportation of Wilden Acosta, a young teenager who fled Honduras after a gang member threatened to kill him. The Bangladeshi and South Asian asylum seekers currently in corporate prisons who are on hunger strike, and pending deportations of Ladizilo Padilla Ocheo, a father who has lived in Tennessee for almost 20 years, are wrong. They must be reunited with their families. We need an immigration system that unites families, not one that tears them apart. Senator Sanders has previously called for the Obama administration to reassess its immigration enforcement initiative and extend temporary protected status to families who have fled violence in Central America. He has introduced legislation that would eliminate quotas for the number of immigrants held in detention and ban private prisons and co-sponsored legislation to guarantee due process for border refugees. Recently, he joined a letter calling for a transgender detainee to be protected from the abuse, unreasonable strip searches, and sexual assault while in U.S. custody. It's a shame that you have to protect somebody from sexual assault in U.S. custody, and you have to say that out loud. I need to write legislation to protect this person from being sexually assaulted by ICE guards. Nevertheless, I just want to show a disparity between somebody who means it versus everyone else who's yelling about this hysteria, who may not necessarily have said anything in the previous administration when the stuff was also, again, potentially at a lower level. Not necessarily breaking up families, but definitely kicking people out of the country, even people that were going back to death sentences. This is not binary, by the way. Both things can be true. It can be true that Donald Trump has been a son of a bitch in regards to this policy that he's been doing that has been stripping and ripping away kids. That's a horrible thing. That's true. It is also not necessarily a good thing in what the last administration was doing. I'm making a point that a lot of these people didn't necessarily give it the due attention the last time around, but they're giving it due attention this time around as they pile on to this kind of collusion of media. I'm just making the point that before the limelight and spotlight had turned its focus into this, there has been one senator, independent from Vermont, that had already put a stamp on it before everyone else had got around to it. One Senator Bernie Sanders, 2016. I like to give him credit when credit is due because it feels good when I do it, as opposed to tearing him down when he fucks up. So, this is one of those times where clap of the hands, Bernie Sanders. I'll end this here. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course you can support the Patreon. Prime Minister's Questions is coming up in 5 minutes. Thanks guys.